Welcome to a new edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns here on from our STL Sports Page studio, coming to you on Halloween. Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween! It's a good day.
We're going to be will the trick or treat be on the Cardinals? I guess that's what we have to find out. So it'll be interesting. The Cardinals, of course, have been in the middle of their off season for a while now, but baseball's official off season began here on late on Wednesday night when the Dodgers, in an improbable comeback, come back and clinch the World Series.
That game was pretty remarkable for any baseball fan that is just out there loving good baseball. That was pretty incredible to see the fight in the Dodgers to come back.
Yeah, you kind of wondered if the Yankees won that game, what would happen as the momentum was flipped as they went back to LA, but it didn't happen. Dodgers win that series in 5 games. Congratulations, of course, to the 2 former Cardinals, part of that World Series team, Jack Flaherty and Tommy Edman, although Flaherty was not exactly stellar on the mound.
The starting pitching for the Dodgers was certainly the question mark going into the series, right? And, they for somebody that was going to have a bullpen game, and Flaherty was one of the guys they needed to count on, and they ended up having to use 8 pitchers in that game last night and finish it with a starter as well.
Well, it goes to prove you can spend $1 billion on players over the winter, but you still might not have enough pitching.
You can never have enough pitching.
Of course, now next year they're making Otani back, which could change.
That could change a lot of things.
So anyway, obviously the Dodgers will have the World Series parade on Friday, and then kind of baseball's off season will officially kick into gear. But a couple things going on that we wanted to catch up on here involving the Cardinals as we do kind of get set for the reset and the winter. And I think everybody like us is kind of curious to see what's going to happen.
It'll be very interesting to see. There are a lot of question marks. You've got 5 days now to decide the options on a few players here. And you've got, the clock is ticking now on the reset, as John Mozeliak has called it for this year.
Derek Gould of the Post-Dispatch, our colleague, is reporting on Thursday that the Cardinals have decided to not pick up the options on Lance Lynn, Keenan Middleton, and Kyle Gibson. Unfortunately, it's a case where I think you kind of saw that coming. I mean, I think it's just when they said that how much they were going to, and they really haven't given us a number yet. When you look at the fact that they say they're going to cut payroll, then I think it's a case of that made the most sense.
And I think anyone that's watched this show, we've said that before, they probably were not going to pick up the options on those guys just based on, like you said, we don't know where this number of payroll is going to end up at. And so by declining those options, you're also not necessarily saying that they're not coming back. Right. You're just allowing them to, A, talk to other teams, and B, if you want to restructure their deal or offer them less money, that's an option too.
Of course, the $1 million options on each of the 3 contracts. So they were scheduled to pay Wynn and Gibson $12 million each, Middleton $6 million for next year. So they're basically saving $27 million with this decision. And of the 3, I think the most likely to be able to accept a smaller deal and come back would be Gibson.
I would agree. And I think, Kyle's a guy who pitched well, and I think everyone would say they'd be happy to have him back the way that it's going. But, all of it is going to come down to money, right? You freed up some other money by not bringing back Paul Goldschmidt, and you're going to free up some other money throughout various trades. It's just a matter of who's going to be on the trade block. Is Miles Michaelis going to be there? Is Sonny Gray going to be there? Is Steven Matz going to be there? All question marks that we just have to wait and see.
The free agent window, of course, begins 5 days after the World Series. So on Monday, team players will have the option of starting to talk contract with other clubs. And, of course, the Cardinals will have the option of starting to talk contract with other free agents as well. But they basically said that they're not going to be in the market for any of the higher-end free agents.
I'm very curious to see what happens this offseason because you've got a handful of teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees that are going to pay whatever it takes to get a few players. Somebody out there said the Dodgers are interested in getting Juan Soto.
Why not?
And why not? They can pay him. And Soto said last night after the game, I'm available and open for all 30 teams. So how much money is he going to get? And what is that money that Soto gets going to do to the rest of the free agent market for everybody else? And you got teams that can't pay that.
No. And it just seems like the gap between the haves, like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, and the have-nots, which not even the Cardinals aren't even a have-not. I mean, they're somewhere in the middle, but the White Sox, the Marlins, the Rockies, that gap is just ridiculous.
It's too big. You've got to do something to, we're never going to have a salary cap, right? I think we've determined that, but there's got to be, to me, the only way to fix it is you make a larger penalty for the luxury tax. Mm-hmm. And so that guys are then afraid to go over that. And so it works more as a cap than it is right now. Of
course, the other thing, of course, gets started kind of coming up in baseball next week will be the general managers meetings starting in San Antonio. That's kind of the unofficial kickoff to the trade season. It's where, kind of teams get together and say, hey, I'm thinking about maybe moving so-and-so. Would you have any interest? And what kind of players would we be able to talk about in return? So not expecting any trades to happen like immediately, but I know in past years, some of the bigger trades that the Cardinals have made, they kind of get the ball rolling at the GM meetings.
And I think it'll be interesting to watch to see who is on the trade block for the Cardinals. And it's probably safe to assume that 75 to 80% of this roster is going to be available on the free agent and trade market, right? There's a handful of guys that we could say, like the Mason Winds of the world, that are not going to be on the trade market. But I would think, guys like Sonny Gray and Nolan Arenado certainly are.
They obviously would have to have some conversations with those guys, and John Mozeliak told us at the end of the season press conference that he intended to have those conversations at some point, since those players both have clauses in their contract that they would have to approve a deal. But if they're really serious about doing this reset, and those players don't really want to be here for a couple of years with a club that may not necessarily be in contention for a pennant, they may be looking to trade those guys. It's going to be a really interesting winter. And I think also, as far as even getting back to our discussion about Kyle Gibson, I think you look at all five of the Cardinals' other potential starting pitchers, and Michaelis, Matz, Eric Fetty, even Andre Palante, I wouldn't be willing to talk about trading any of those guys.
Yeah. And what's interesting is how many of these guys, want to be on a team that is going to be a contending team. And not saying that the Cardinals won't be a contending team, because there's some young talent here and there's some good players. It's not like it's going to be, a rough year to watch. And I think that's why Mozeliak uses the term reset instead of rebuild, because it's not going to be a long process like some of these other teams that have gone through, right? You looked at a couple of these teams that had to completely tear it down and rebuild and get back to where they were. And that worked for some teams, but this is not going to be the case for the Cardinals. It's not going to be a long-term, process here. And again, if miraculously something changed with what is now FanDuel Sports Network and there's a contract to be had, that could alter the Cardinals' plans here pretty quickly.
It's also not like they're stripping down this club to where it'll have a $50 or $60 million payroll. I mean, they were close to $200 million this year, which I think is a record. And just by the cuts that they made, with Goldschmidt and the other players not picking up the options, you're basically down $50 million almost in the negotiation. So you're now down to about 150. You move a couple of those other bigger contracts, you're probably right where you need to be. So that it's not like we're saying that the 25 players who ended the season, or 26 players who ended the season in 2024 are not. None of those guys are going to be here in 2025, because I would bet probably at least more than half, maybe three-quarters of them will still be on the team.
And as we've said before, some of these young guys just need a chance to play, right? I think Victor Scott II has a great opportunity to really come in and be a strong presence on this team with Mason Wynn. If Nolan Gorman can figure out the whole strikeout situation deal, he can be really good too. If Jordan Walker can figure out how to hit a breaking ball, he's going to be really good too. And so,
or just not swing at it,
that too. But that off speed, low and away, if he stops swinging at it, it's going to be a lot better. But what I'm getting at is these young kids have an opportunity to be a really good team. So yes, we're cutting $50 million, or I don't know what the number is going to be, but yes, we're cutting payroll, but I still think this is going to be a competitive team. We're not going to be the White Sox that are going to lose 120 games. That's not going to happen. This team is still going to contend for a playoff spot, even with a smaller payroll.
I would think so. Plus, again, you're competing in the NL Central Division, which doesn't have the Cubs probably have the ability to spend the most money of any club in that division, but they just haven't chosen to really go overspending yet. So when you're competing with the Reds and the Pirates and the Brewers, all really in basically the same level of market and financial revenues as the Cardinals, you ought to be competitive with those guys from a payroll standpoint and obviously from a talent standpoint on the field.
Yes, I think we're very thankful that we're not in the NL West with the Padres, Giants, and Dodgers who just keep spending, and so not having to compete with them. I think we're thankful that we're in the NL Central, and yes, I think we can compete with those teams, even with some of the younger guys that we have.
Rob Raines visiting with Mike Raines here on the Raines on the Cardinals podcast on STLSportspage.com. Thanks as always to our title sponsors for the podcast, Archwell Health, Drury Hotels, AAA Travel of Missouri, as well as all of our other sponsors here on the website for keeping this broadcast and all of our content free and available to to all of our listeners. Of course, you can get this broadcast now everywhere. You can pick up any of your podcasts, Spotify and all of the other platforms where you have all your favorite podcasts. So check us out on those. Try to make it very easy for you to find. So first piece of business, I think, for the Cardinals that we'll find out about what's kind of going on is that Sunday night will be the Gold Glove announcements. Cardinals have 3 finalists: Mason Wynn, Nolan Arenado, Brendan Donovan. What are your odds?
If I had to guess, I would say the safest bet to win is Mason Wynn, and I would say second is Brendan Donovan. And I think we would all say that we were a little surprised that Arenado was a finalist. He kind of had a rough first half of the season there. So
they played better in the second half.
Much better in the second half, but kind of surprised still that he was a finalist. So I would say Mason is your safest bet.
I hate to disagree with you, but I disagree with you. I'm not to say that I don't want Mason Wynn to win it, not saying that I don't think he deserves to win it, but I think it is hard. It may be not as hard now as it used to be because so much of the metrics that are used in measuring it's not just used to be just a vote of the coaches and the managers from the team who got to vote and decide that. You couldn't vote for anybody on your own team, but now that's still an element of the Gold Glove Award voting by Rawlings, but it's also the sabermetric element, which is more of a computer-based metric system in which Wynn does grade out very highly. He did win the Fielding Bible Award, but I still think it's hard for a rookie to win that award, no matter how good you are.
It is tough, and I think what's nice, people don't think about this, but now with the balanced schedule, you see everybody a little bit more, so it makes it easier to vote for some of these guys. In previous years, you weren't able to vote for this guy or that guy because you didn't see a whole lot of them, so you didn't get a lot of options to figure out what kind of player are they, and I think that benefits things, especially for the All-Star game, as well as, postseason awards. And so I would think if I was a betting man, I would say that Mason Wynn is your safest option.
The other 2 finalists for shortstop at Gold Glove of the National League, Dansby Swanson of the Cubs, Ezekiel Tovar of the Rockies. Swanson has won the last 2.
That is correct.
And very good defensive player. The other finalists for the defensive award would be the utility award, the one Donovan won a couple years ago, would be Kiki Hernandez of the Dodgers and Jared Trolio of the Pirates. I like Donovan's chances.
I like Donovan's chances too, for sure.
Because again, he's a former winner. I mean, that carries.
The former winner helps too, but I also think sometimes the weight of the team and the popularity too, because Kiki Hernandez plays for the Dodgers, and obviously all of these votes were done
correct
prior to the postseason, because people may have a different opinion of Kiki Hernandez now after coming through pretty big in the postseason here. But I would think that Donovan and Wynn are your safest options for sure.
The other thing I want to point out attention to, that we have a story elsewhere up on the website about Rob Cerfolio, who's hired by the Cardinals as their new assistant general manager. He'll be in charge of director of player development as well as director of performance, coming over from the Cleveland Guardians. Former baseball player at Yale, for a longtime Cardinal coach, good friend of ours, John Stuper. So I had a chance to talk to John, as well as a couple of Rob's former college teammates, and a long conversation with him as well about what he's going to try to accomplish here with the Cardinals. So you have to get a chance to click over elsewhere on the website here and check out that profile story about one of the, I think it'll be a key guy, maybe not necessarily as key to the Cardinals' success in 2025, but as they set that foundation, bring in all the people that he's going to hire, the new farm director, the new director of performance, all the new instructors, all the new coordinators that they're going to be hiring, he's going to have a direct hand in all of that. So as he reset kind of the foundation and the blueprint for this organization going forward, he's going to be a very key guy.
Very key guy. And I think that the 2 most important guys in the future of this organization are Rob Cerfolio and Chaim Bloom. Between the 2 of them, it is their job and their task now to basically restructure the entire minor league player development system. And that's everything from how they scout players to how the analytics team, tracks what metrics they should be measuring, to how they evaluate talent both inside and outside the organization. And so the profile piece that you did certainly highlights a lot of, the past of Cerfolio and how he came to be where he is today. So encourage everybody to check it out.
I've had a chance to talk to John a lot over the years, obviously covered him back when he played here in the 80s, and have been to Yale for some games and stuff over the past, working on other different projects and stuff. And I can tell you that he's been a fan of and one of the biggest boosters of Rob Cerfolio for a long time. He really thought he probably had the best chance to be a really success in a baseball front office. And he's got 2 guys now that are general managers of teams that played for him, and Craig Breslow of the Red Sox, Mike Elias of the Orioles. Both were played for John. And the other guy, of course, the most famous of his former players was a former presidential candidate, Ron DeSantis, who's the governor of Florida. So he said he was at a spring training game, the end of spring training last year, sitting in a suite, and the Orioles were playing the Red Sox. Craig Breslow, his former player, is in one suite. He's in the middle suite with Ron DeSantis. Mike Elias, the other former player of his, the GM of the Orioles, is in the suite next to him. Like, what am I here? Why am I here? What am I doing here?
He's had some cool guys for sure.
Yeah, he's obviously retired now, living in Florida. But hats off to him, because I think you think of a lot of different schools as far as baseball factories. Maybe University of Texas, University of Florida, all the Arizona States, USC's of the world. I don't know that you've got a baseball factory quite like Yale. Chaim Bloom, also a graduate of Yale. He didn't play baseball in college, but does have a relationship with John as well. But it's just amazing how many people are coming out of Yale to go on the front office.
Yale guys like to hire Yale guys, and the two owners and president of the St. Louis Cardinals
also are Yale
both
guys.
The DeWitts are also Yale guys. So you've got a strong group of Yale contingent here.
I guess the background is that you got to be pretty smart to go there.
You got to be pretty smart to go there.
So I encourage you to check out that story as well. And as we mentioned, of course, the news next week will come out of Texas, where John Mozeliak, Chaim Bloom, and the other Cardinals executives in their front office will be gathering down in Texas, and they start to kind of listen to offers and listen to players and kind of shape what decisions are going to come. There'll be some busy times coming up here in the month of November. You got the deadline to set the 40-man roster will have to happen. You got obviously some players that you'll be considering for the Rule 5 draft. The other guy I want to mention that I think is playing himself into a more prominent role maybe than people expected in 2025 is Thomas Saggese, who's just lit up the Arizona Fall League. He's played terrific out there, and I think he's definitely going to be a name that you're going to see penciled into perhaps maybe not necessarily a full-time starting position in 2025, but definitely a guy that, like Donovan, can bounce around over the field and find a variety of different ways to see him on the field.
And a guy like that, the way he's playing, makes you feel a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but more willing to move a player like Nolan Arenado, because JC could play third base. You could probably even put Nolan Gorman at third base. You could put Brendan Donovan there. So you've got a few options there. The guy, to me, that's really got to figure it out, that's going to be a key component here this offseason, is Nolan Gorman.
Yeah.
Because Nolan Gorman's really got to figure out, can he be an everyday player? And the Cardinals have to figure out if they're willing to take that risk and that shot on him. And so I think Brendan Donovan, Thomas Saggese are going to make it tough on Gorman with the way they're playing.
Right. And I think, Gorman is the guy that probably had, other than Jordan Walker, I would say maybe even more than Walker, has the potential to lead this team in home runs of all those young players. I mean, the other guys are good players, but they're not, 30-plus potential home run hitters. So you want that to be an element of your game. You want to have that, 30 home run bat in there, then Gorman's probably your guy. If you can find a way to win without that, then maybe not.
Are you willing to take the risk of 30 home runs also for a 25 to 30% strikeout rate?
Right. Well, that's the way the game is played today. So
I'm not saying it isn't played that way, and that's been the Cardinals' biggest issue, in my opinion, over the last few years, is we live and die by the home run. Mm-hmm. We don't get base hits anymore. We don't manufacture runs. We never sacrifice to move anybody over. And you watch some of these other teams in the postseason that just come through with base hit after base hit after base hit. And then they still get the big home run. Yeah. But, some of these guys are successful just getting base hits and moving runners over.
And maybe with the new hitting coach too, that'll be a change in philosophy. We have to wait and see how that works out as well. So.
And one of the things we've harped on before is this team's batting average with runners in scoring position or the bases loaded was awful. Yeah. So how do you fix that? If you're going to strike out 30% of the time, is that going to fix that?
No. It'll be interesting. Obviously, a lot of news to come, starting with the Gold Glove announcements on Sunday, and then the decision on the free agents as well. Of course, as we all lead up to spring training next year, don't forget our Homewood Suites party, March the 11th. Not too late to make your reservations. If you got some Christmas shopping on your list, somebody who would love a trip down to Florida, you can get all the information on our spring training page. Just go to the spring training tab on the STL Sports page. .com homepage, get the information for the link, a special discounted rate while rooms are available down at the hotel as well. You don't even have to be there just for our party. You can go down there at any time. Of course, it's always a good time. And this winter, I suspect, is going to fly by because of all the news that we're going to be covering.
I think there will be a lot of news, right? And I'm really curious to see the entire free agent market throughout Major League Baseball with where we're at with revenue and with where we're at with these TV contracts that half the teams are still worried about.
we'll see what happens, and we'll of course have it all covered for you here with another edition coming up soon of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast here on STLSportspage.com. Happy Halloween for Mike Raines. This is Rob Raines. Have a great day, everybody.